Hello, everyone, and welcome to the video overview for Lesson 2. Let's take a look at a screen here so we can start looking at it together. So there are three kinds of verbs in Spanish: AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs. And what that refers to is the last two letters of the verb. So all verbs in Spanish start with either they end with either AR, ER, or IR. Now, when you conjugate these verbs, what you're really saying is you're choosing the correct form of this verb so you can speak like, a native speaker does. It's like the verb to be in English. I can't say I to be a teacher. I say I am a teacher. So the conjugations of the verb ser are I am, you are, he and she is, we are, and they are. So we're going to learn, we've already studied some verbs in Spanish in this course, but we're going to learn how to conjugate verbs that end in an AR. And there's a process to it. So this is how it works. The first thing you do is you drop this AR. So you're going to get a stem of HABL, and that's all. But you're going to add these endings right here where my cursor is. So for yo, you're going to add an O, and hablo means I talk. For the to form, you're going to drop the AR and then add an AS, and tu hablas means you talk. El, ella, and usted, it's an A, so it's habla. So él habla, ella habla, usted habla. Usted habla means you talk. Uh, él and ella means he and she talk, right? He or she talks. Sorry, I should say, right? Nosotros, we add an amos, get hablamos. Ellos, ellas, and ustedes, I abbreviated this for so it all fit, get hablan. So there's your conjugations, o, as, a, amos, and on. Now you just have to memorize that, and you have to know which each of these endings go with. So the yo form always ends in an o, right? For example, and that'll help you conjugate almost any AR verb in Spanish. There's a couple of exceptions. So let's take a look. Here's an example. Maria and the professor are having a conversation. So she says, Yo no hablo español. ¿Usted habla español? And the teacher goes, Sí, yo hablo español. Y mis amigos Roberto y Teresa también hablan español. They talk Spanish. Todos nosotros hablamos español. We all talk Spanish. We all speak Spanish. Okay. So that's just some examples there for you. And I also want to talk about the verb estar. It's conjugated a little bit differently. Most of the endings are exactly the same, but the yo form of estar is estoy. What do we use the verb estar for? We use it to talk about feelings and location. Now, that's different than the verb ser, which we already learned. And I'll go through that in just a little bit, okay? But here's an example. ¿Cómo estás? I'm talking about your feelings. How are you feeling today is what I'm really asking. And the answer might be estoy muy bien, gracias. I'm fine, thank you. If I want to know where somebody is, like maybe I'm talking on the phone, I go, ¿Y dónde estás? Where are you right now? That's location, isn't it? So the answer would be estoy en mi clase. I'm in my classroom right now, okay? So that's just an AR verb that has a yo form that's a little bit different, and we use it for these two things and a few other things too that we're not going to study right now. Now, the verb gustar is very different. It means to like, but it functions differently from other verbs in Spanish. So it is an AR verb, but it's not conjugated like other verbs. So basically, we have either gusta or gustan. I didn't write them both. I just put the slash. So it's me gusta or te gusta, le gusta, nos gusta, or les gusta. So that would mean I like, you like, he, she likes, and also you, usted, like. We like, and they like, or also you guys, you all like. Now, what's the deal with the gusta and gustan? I'll explain it to you. If we like one thing, we use gusta. And if we like more than one thing, two things, three things, a million things, we say gustan. So here's a couple examples. ¿Te gustan los libros? Do you like books in general? Yeah, I like books. All of them. I like books, right? So that's plural. It's more than one. So we say gustan. Sí, me gustan mucho. Here's another one. A Juan le gusta mucho hablar español. What's the story here? Speaking Spanish is only one thing. It can't be more than one thing. So we use gusta. Here's one where we use gustan again. Los deportes, sports in general. Hey, you like sports. You like all of them. A usted, it's talking to somebody formally here. A usted le gustan los deportes. By the way, for clarification, you can do this. In this sentence, les gusta bailar. We don't really know who likes to dance. We know it's somebody plural, they or maybe you guys, but we're not sure. So we can clarify by doing this. A Roberto y Julia les gusta bailar. They like to dance, okay? So and now we know exactly who likes to dance. I want to go back up here again. Take a look at this. Our book really only has us learn me or te. So if I like one thing, I say me gusta. If I like two things, I say me gustan. If you like one thing, I say te gusta. If you like several things, I say te gusta. Don't really have to know these, but I just put them in here because it's Spanish and it's there for you, right? If you want to study it a little bit. All right, we're going to move ahead. And the next thing we need to know are question words. I'm not going to go through them all right now. The followings are the question words that you are expected to know for this course. You ought to be able to at least recognize them, okay, when you see them in writing. And that way you can look them up if you need to. But here they are, and I'm just going to go through them slowly, and you can come back and look at them again if you want to. You can repeat this video. So there's quite a few of them, and they are good question words for us to know. All right. Now, the verb estar, let's get back to it. The verb estar means to be. This is exactly the same meaning as ser, but they have different uses. So the different forms of estar are estoy, estás, está, estamos, and están. That's how we say I am, you are, he or she is, you are, we are, they are, or also you all, you guys, you plural, are. So I mentioned this already. We generally use estar for talking about location and temporary conditions. Now, there are other uses, but we're not going to study them right now. So you can take a look at this, but here's a couple of examples. Juan está enfermo hoy. That's temporary. He's not permanently sick. He's just feeling sick today. No está bien. He's not well. He's not feeling well. So there's an example of using the verb estar for feelings. Ukiah está en California. This is an example of location. Now, you can't use the verb ser for these things. If you're going to talk about where something is, you have to use the verb estar. That's just a rule. And we want to talk a little bit about the difference between ser and estar. So we generally use the verb ser for talking about identity. Example, yo soy Dave. ¿Quién es usted? I am Dave. That's my identity. Who are you? There's other ways of doing that, but that's one way. Occupation. Example, el señor Lopez es profesor. He's a teacher. By the way, I left the un out because we generally don't put that in when we're talking about professions, okay? So, el señor Lopez es profesor. That's his occupation. So I use the verb ser. Origin. Yo soy de Perú y Marta es de Mexico. I am from, my origin, my point of origin, I am from Peru. Well, I'm not really, but I'm just saying that in the sense. I'm from Peru. Marta is from Mexico. Okay, so origin is with the verb ser, and you have to put in the de because you are from a place. It's important. Yo soy de Perú. We also use it for telling time. Son las 4:30, for example. It's 4:30 right now, is what you're saying. We cannot use the verb estar to express these things. For these things, we must use the verb ser. So that's the difference between estar and ser. We already studied the verb ser in lesson 1. Just a little bit of extra review for you. Okay? Let's move on down to the last thing, I think. Oh, sorry. We also have some useful vocabulary of location with estar. And this is the kind of thing, I'll scroll through it slowly. These are very useful things. You could say, el libro está cerca de la mesa. The book is near the table. You have to use the verb estar for these things because you're talking about location with these kinds of words, all right? Here's the rest of them. There's quite a few of them. The book wants you to know this stuff. I do too. So make sure you're at least familiar with those vocabulary. It's in your textbook, your e-text, and also in the vocabulary pages. And the last thing we're going to talk about now is numbers 31 and higher. Now, I'm not going to take the time to list and go through all the numbers, up to 1,000,000. But I did want to point out a couple things. These things are in Estructura 2.4 in your book. You can go over the numbers that way if you need to. A couple little things that I wanted to point out. This is also in your book, but I wanted to mention it too. We use the word cien if we're saying 100, like 100 books. Cien libros, 100 books. But for the numbers 101 through 199, we use ciento. For example, hay 100 libros, there's 100 books, y 140 lápices. There's 100 books and 140 pencils. So as soon as you are beyond 100, from 101 to 199, use ciento when you're counting, okay? Hundreds also reflect gender. So here's an example. From 200 to 900 only, okay? But the hundreds reflect gender. For example, hay 200 libros y 200 mesas en la biblioteca. So you can see libros, masculine. So you have to make the hundreds masculine. Mesas, feminine. You can tell by the A, right? You have to make the number 200 feminine as well. When counting numbers, number 3 here, when counting numbers, for numbers that end in 1, like 21, 31, 141, 261, whatever, if it ends in 1, we drop the O from uno before masculine noun. So if you're counting, and you've got 41 boys in the gym, you say, hay 41 chicos en el gimnasio. You don't want to say 41, you just say 41 chicos en el gimnasio. Now that's if a noun comes right after, a masculine noun comes right after a number that ends in 1, okay? Now, when count is it's similar anyway. Number 4, when counting feminine items, we use una with numbers that end in 1. For example, hay 21 mesas. Now we don't make it plural, it's just 21 tables en la clase. Okay, just throwing that out there. And last little thing, the numbers 500, 700, and 900 have irregular forms. 500, 700, that one's not too different. It would normally be 700. That's kind of a mouthful, right? So they changed it to 700 over the centuries that people were saying it. And finally, for the same reason, 900 is a little easier to say than 900. And that's the only reason why we do it. Okay, I'm going to stop the share here. I hope that you enjoyed this and learned something from it. And that is about all I have for you. See you in the next lesson.